we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for Week 5 action. And Sterling, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing good, man. I mean, it was a rough week last week football-wise, but I get primetime football this weekend, so I'm a happy man.
Yeah, I hear you. And, Bears ended up getting the win over the Rams, so it made me happy. They kind of did a lot more of the things that I asked them to do in our podcast last week, which was very, very nice to see. But this week, there was something that came out pretty much on Tuesday morning that I would say shocked the NFL world, but it also wasn't a shock whatsoever at all. And that was Davante Adams requested a trade from the Raiders.
Yeah, it was one of those, like you said, shock, not shock. It's like, oh shit, he actually asked for it, when the rest of us were going, when's he going to ask? Really, the Raiders haven't had a whole lot going for them to start this season. It's been up and down. It's been questionable. And when you got a guy like Davante Adams who wants out, you got to look at it and go, we can get enough trade capital to really kickstart a rebuild here. And so that's something that I do think they've got to entertain the idea, and I really think they need to find a way to move him before the deadline to maximize the value.
Yeah, I look at that entire situation, and the Raiders at this point, they know they have to trade Davante Adams. He's going to get traded, I think, this week. And, the second that all the news came out, again, I know your text was, oh, Davante's coming to Pittsburgh. And I was like, okay, I think you're forgetting there's a team in green that's in New York that plays in New Jersey that is going to kind of be the leading favorite there. But yeah, pretty much I saw a thing where someone said, here are the 7 teams that are likely going to be making offers for Davante Adams. I was like, why are we talking about 7 or 8 teams here, guys? It's really 3 teams I would think are really going to be pushing hard for this. And my initial thought was it was going to be the Jets, the Bills, and it was also going to be the Steelers. I saw something where it was like, oh, the Cowboys are in the mix and the Chiefs are going to be in the mix. And I was like, listen, I don't think the Cowboys are going to go make that move. Jerry Jones, he's made some interesting moves before, but this one, I just don't know why that move would be made. Again, you already have a top weapon in CeeDee Lamb making a ton of money, and if the Raiders are going to send him to the Cowboys, the Raiders are going to say, you are going to take his entire contract. We aren't going to cut it. And I would also struggle to think that he would go to the Steelers because, again, the Raiders are playing the Steelers in a couple of weeks. But also, these are longtime rivals. They're not division rivals, but these are 2 organizations that have never really liked each other. And so it would be tough. I posed this question to my old man who's a Raiders fan. I said, if the Chiefs say we'll give you 2 first-round picks for Davante, if I'm the Raiders and that's the deal that comes across my desk, I take it. Because listen, here's the thing. It's going to be a very late first-round pick. And yeah, you're going to have to play him twice a year for the next couple of years. But you need so much on this team, man. And I know the asking price has been like, oh, it's a 2nd-round pick and something else. I just look at it and go, if your division rival, the team that you hate, if they offer you 2 first-round, if they offer you the farm, you take the farm. You might not like it, but it's one of those things where you gotta do it, man. It's it's very, very unideal, or not ideal, because
Yeah.
unideal is not a phrase, but it's one of those things where if they do it, you have to consider that. But I don't think the Chiefs would even offer that. I think they
No.
might offer their first round pick this year and go, but they've also said we'll take the best offer. I think that's excluding the Chiefs at this point. It's yeah.
Yeah, see, I I think when the news dropped, I think most of the teams in the NFL picked up the phone and called the Raiders to see. Like that's where I think some of these guys are coming up with 7, 8 teams. I, much like you said, I don't think the Steelers were really a front runner at any point because of the rivalry between these two teams. It would be like the Ravens and the Steelers making a trade, or the Bengals. Like it's not going to happen. The two teams I thought were most likely were, again, the Jets, like yourself, reunited with Aaron Rodgers, or the Saints, again, to reunite with Derek Carr. It would be one of his two buddies that he would go with. The problem with the Saints is they're already in cap hell. How are they going to manage this? And what are they going to send back to try and get off the books?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Even at one point, I heard the Bears were a potential front runner. I was like, why? Like, what would we be doing? We'd be trading Davante Adams and our own second round pick, or getting Davante Adams and then sending Keenan Allen. That doesn't seem like a great management of assets, but
No.
like I like, again, the second that I saw that, I was like, no, stop it, you're being dumb, whoever posted that. But yeah, like what you said, every team probably made a phone call to just
When
check
they heard a
in.
second round pick, yeah, you can't not pick up the phone and ask. You know, I'm sure every AFC North team did. I'm sure the Bengals and the Ravens both
Oh,
called to see,
100%,
you know.
100%. This
But
is
ultimately, I think it's going to end up being the Jets where he lands. The Jets have the most available to them that they could send back and probably are the most willing to part with that second round pick, probably a third as well. And they've got a handful of options that they could ship back if the Raiders also wanted a player.
yeah, it like our pre-podcast meetings, what we always do. You even mentioned that, you said like, hey, there's a possibility of like, hey, we'll send you a second round pick and Hassan Reddick,
Yep.
because it's one of those things where Hassan Reddick has yet to play for the Jets. And yeah, the only thing that I think would be a little bit of a holdup with that is that Hassan Reddick would need his contract. I think he would be willing to play for the Jets. He just needs that contract, and he's just kind of sitting out because he's going, what's the point if I'm not going to have a long-term deal? And I don't know if the Raiders would want to pay him big time money for that, but let's say they do. Guess what? You have Max Crosby, Hassan Reddick, and Christian Wilkins out there as your edge rushers. That would be nuts. Like, that would be a very fearsome thing. But
Mhm.
I think you and I pretty much immediately saw this and went, okay, it's just a matter of time before we see the New York Jets are trading for Davante Adams.
Yeah.
And yeah, Davante has said his number one spot where he wants to go is the Jets. He's basically just gone out and said, trade me, bring me back to Papa Rogers, and let me go play with him. And I think that could potentially unlock that Jets offense that we've seen be a little bit stagnant.
Yeah, I mean that is a scary prospect. I don't really want to see it happen because like the amount of weapons and tools that Aaron Rodgers would then have around him in New York, it would honestly it would start looking a little bit like the Green Bay Packers of the 2010s. And that was not pleasant to watch for either one of us really because my Steelers went up against them a lot in that time and they were always a juggernaut of a team. Aaron Rodgers, when he has enough weapons, even at 42, is going to be exceedingly dangerous in this league.
Without a doubt. And this is, like, we're gonna find out this week. I have a feeling. We knew
I
that the
think so.
Jets weren't gonna make that trade because they are in London this week. I even said on Thursday, I was like, listen, the Jets could probably make that trade and just say to Davante, hey, go to New York, find a place to live for a week, just basically spend it while we're in London, and we'll give you the playbook and just kind of learn that stuff at the facility, blah blah, all like that kind of stuff, and get him kind of a little bit prepared of what the offense is going to do. But yeah, once he's there, Nathaniel Hackett, the offensive play caller, worked with him in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers is basically like Davante Adams could essentially go out there for the Jets off of 1 day trade, and Aaron Rodgers in the huddle just goes, "You run this," and Davante go, "I run this," and he
Yeah.
throw ball, he catch ball, they score touchdown. Like that's clearly like the significant thing, but I think it would be really fun to see him with the KC Chiefs. Like I know a lot of people are looking at me, and I know you're kind of giving me that look of like, really, motherfucker, you're trying to give the Chiefs
I think
17
it'd
and
be
0.
fun too, man.
Yeah,
That would be crazy to like. We haven't seen Patrick Mahomes with a true all-star receiver since Tyreek Hill left.
yeah,
Like it could be crazy. The thing, like we think Rodgers and Adams would be good. Mahomes and Adams would be scary, man.
with
That
Andy Reid
if they
calling the
made that trade
plays.
this week and they managed to win, they might have themselves a path to undefeated at that point.
Yeah, and like at that point, we're not just talking three-peat. We're talking the Chiefs potentially trying to go for four, because again, Davante Adams, he'd be there for 2 years,
Yeah.
and you'd have Rashid Rice back healthy, and at I know it's one of those things, but like we all talked about it last year of going like, oh, if the Chiefs win this year, they clearly won't be able to do it for a three-peat. But like again, this is the Chiefs, man. This is
Yeah.
the Chiefs. If Patrick Mahomes is the starting quarterback of this team and of this organization, it's gonna be hard for me not to pick them to be a Super Bowl favorite every single year.
No, you're right. And I mean, getting Davante Adams in there for a couple of years could be good because I think if they do three-peat, I think this would be the year when Travis Kelce likely retires afterwards. I don't think he would stick around for four.
We thought that at the end of the last year too, though.
No.
Like it's one of those things where I think if they have the motivation right, they all kind of sit back and go, we have the potential to not only win this year, but to win next year. And if they were to manage to get someone like Davante Adams, I think
Hmm.
that puts them all into a big time perspective of going, you know, it's probably like at that point, it would be Big Reds last year. And so it
Yep.
could be like, okay, Andy, go out on that four-peat, something no coach will ever do again
Hmm.
until Bobby Sloak becomes the head coach of the Bears, and he just gets him and Caleb Williams just moving, and then it's just 8 years of domination. The rest of the league hates us.
Yeah. I mean,
Stop
I
smoking the
think the
crack pipe.
Chiefs are good. Hmm?
Stop. I think you're what you're meant to say is stop smoking the crack pipe with that fantasy.
Right? No, it's good to see you hopeful for once about your Bears. It's a good thing to
I'm
see.
always hopeful about the Bears, but
Hopeful but sad.
the problem is with me with the hopefulness of the Bears is it's always I'm hopeful for stuff that's so far into the future, because again last year it was I'm hopeful we get the number one pick so that we can draft Caleb Williams. We drafted Caleb Williams. Now I'm hopeful that we fire Matt Eberflus at the end of the year so we can get someone who actually knows how to call plays. And we've talked about that before. It's still early in the year, but yeah, it's that pipe dream I'm allowed to have myself every once in a while.
100% it is. You know, the big challenge the Chiefs are going to have here, though, is they're going to have to send the house
Yeah.
to get Davante Adams for the Raiders. Because we talked about how the Raiders would never make that trade with the Steelers. Like, if there's a team that they're bigger rivals with than the Steelers, it's the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're not willing to send him to Pittsburgh, they're really not going to be wanting to send him to, like Kansas City. Like, sure, send him to Pittsburgh. You're going to have to face him in 2 weeks and maybe once next year. You send him to KC, you're facing him twice a year for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
You're going to see him a lot. I just don't know if the Chiefs would be willing to give up that much because, yes, you're getting Davante Adams, but we've seen what the Chiefs can do with the 32nd overall pick on a regular basis. And so for them, they look at it and go, do we have to give up two firsts? We can draft two guys that either one or both could Patrick Mahomes could make them look like Davante Adams,
Exactly. And plus
right?
Xavier Worthy was their first round draft pick this year, and
Hmm.
I have not been willing to just completely dismiss him as being a number one caliber Worthy in this offense. I think last week when Rice went down, we saw Worthy step up and kind of take that number one role. I think it's only going to get more and more so. Again, Mahomes has had his longest passing touchdown last week to Rice, or to Worthy, since Tyreek Hill. Like it
Yep.
has been that stretch of time since that has happened. And so yeah, you and I, again, we're just kind of talking teams at this moment, but we all know it's going to be the Jets. And if it's not the Jets, that is going to be kind of the shock of the season, of going, really, the Jets somehow fumbled the bag. They went full Jets and fumbled the guarantee of Davante Adams.
Yep.
And it's going to be interesting to watch, at least for the next couple of days, because again, he's not going to London tomorrow. And so yeah, it's likely to happen this week. I can't imagine it going all the way to trade deadline, because if that's going to trade deadline, we all know Davante, he's probably healthy enough to play. He's just not wanting to play for the Raiders right now, and he's going, I would rather be fully healthy going
Hmm.
to a new team than kind of semi-healthy playing for the team that I want to leave, and everyone already knows I want to leave and I'm on my way out.
Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantees that he's still hurt now. That hamstring could be feeling good by now, but he could be going, why am I going to go out and go full on for this team and potentially re-aggravate that injury when I can rest it for a couple more weeks until they find somewhere for me to play?
Exactly. It's going to be interesting to see, but one
It
of the
will.
things that we talked about in the game picks video that was posted on Sunday evening is, I wanted to talk about the Commanders and going, we talked about, and I know you said the phrase that they could potentially be this Houston Texans team this year. And the way that I view the Commanders right now is, this is a team that is kind of playing with a little bit of house money, I think, at the moment. And Jaden Daniels has, without a doubt, looked like a good quarterback. That offense is moving really, really well. That offensive line is better than I think we initially thought was going to be there for them. That defense is horrible. It is horrible. But the other thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting about with that offense, who's calling the plays? It's Cliff Kingsbury.
Hmm.
Cliff Kingsbury has worked in the NFL as a head coach for 4 years. He took a year off, and he's doing this. I don't care what Ben Johnson has done. I don't care what Bobby Slowick has done. I don't care what Clint Kubiak has done. I don't care about any of these other coaches. Cliff Kingsbury is the top coach candidate right now, because again, he has done it in the NFL. He's coached the Cardinals. Now, was he successful? There was a few years where he was successful. Couldn't get all the way, but the what he's doing right now with this offense, he is the number one candidate. And the second that he leaves, I think this Commanders team is going to show more of its colors. Now, Jaden Daniels, we also forget, I think there's a lot of people that are going out there going, I can't believe the Bears passed on this guy. Going, like, listen, he was a 5-year starter at college. He's 24 years old entering the NFL. He has almost 3 years. He has 2.5 years on Caleb Williams in terms of starting caliber quality college football. Of course, he's going to see the field better than Caleb Williams is at this moment. He's older and he's played more time. It's just one of those things where I think there's going to be a game where the Commanders just kind of get hit in the mouth a little bit. And it's going to be like, oh, you thought you were this? Sit back down. And I think when that game happens, it's going to be a rude awakening for this Commanders fan base. And again, like I said, I think they're playing with house money. I think if you're a Commanders fan, I know our buddy Josh,
Hmm.
he big time Commanders fan. He's really excited from what he's seen. I think it's great. Let him be excited. But you are currently in a glass house, and all it
Hmm.
takes is one person to throw a rock at it. And I just don't think this Commanders. I think soak it up while it lasts, because I don't think this is real.
No, I mean this is promising for the direction the team is going, 100%. But no, you're right. They're gonna get slapped in the mouth at some point, multiple times this season. Like they may be leading the NFC South or yeah NFC East right now, but they're not gonna stay there. That's not gonna happen. Like when I compare them to the Texans, I don't necessarily mean in the record. I more mean in the exciting play that we did not expect to see out of this team. This team
Totally.
that came out of nowhere. Because even the Texans last year, at the start of the year, we looked at them and went, "Those were great picks. They're going to be so good next year."
Yeah.
And then they did it this year. Is what that's sort of what I mean. It's just that excitement factor they've got. And you're right, Cliff Kingsbury is a huge part of that. We've seen that with a few teams on both sides of the balls with coordinators around this league that have had opportunities as head coaches. And I know, as you said, and others are excited to see Cliff Kingsbury get back to a head coaching role. I'm not. I think he will fail again. I think he's one of these guys who
Is a
is
career
really good
coordinator.
at being a coordinator, but he's not the great head coach style, And so that's where, like, I look at him and I go, great, you're doing good. This is one of those situations where it's like, man, if you could get head coach money, but just stay the OC, you would do great things with most of the teams you could go to. If he takes a head coaching job somewhere, I don't know unless it's a situation where you've got all the perfect pieces and everything's already running really smoothly, like Andy Reid retires and he goes and takes over the Chiefs,
Mhm.
something like that, sure. But there's not a lot of situations I see Kingsbury being able to go and be super successful as a head coach. I'd rather see him stay in OC.
See, I completely agree with you. I think when he was the head coach of the Cardinals, he got a little overwhelmed. But I think the difference is that you're gonna see a team that thinks they saw exactly what they saw from him this year. Let's say the Commanders continue to have a great run of form. They'll lose some more games just because they're going up against tougher competitions, but the offense still looks unbelievable and this, that, and the other thing. There's going to be a team out there that goes, we have a young quarterback and we need to help develop them. Or we're going to draft a quarterback in this upcoming draft. And we want this guy, and he's already been an NFL head coach. We all believe in, and a team is going to go, we believe in second chances, and he's going to be the number one guy. And it's going to be over guys like Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson and Clint Kubiak. I think there's going to be a team that just goes, we believe in this guy and we'll give him that second chance and we'll do this. It might be the Saints type situation. There's just going to be a team that goes, we want that experience. And again, he took that year off. So it's not like he was away from the business for years and years and years. And it's not like it's a Bill Belichick who is 72 years old. It's a young
Hmm.
head coach still. And do I think he's going to succeed as a head coach? Probably not. But I think there will be a team that goes, we're gonna take this guy over the others just because he's done it.
That's fair, and you're probably right. There will be a team that will roll those days. I just don't think it's the best move to make if for him. Like maybe if the Commanders are like, oh well, you know what, we're not going to keep Dan Quinn and we'll promote Cliff Kingsbury up there, then okay, he's got some familiarity with the team already. I just I don't know. I
That would
like
be a
seeing him as an
ballsy
OC,
move to fire Dan Quinn to hire Cliff Kingsbury, but I would love it.
right? But
That would be my sort of move of going, oh yeah, you have a defensive minded head coach, fire him for the offensive minded guy, please and thank you.
right, but I mean, because there's another team that we thought was supposed to be bad, and they've got one of the best defenses in the league right now in the Minnesota Vikings with Brian Flores as their DC. That defense, it doesn't have a lot of star power. That defense is being run by a defensive mastermind coach.
Hmm.
It's a coaching masterclass going on over there. And I worry the same thing's going to happen is teams are going to see this that have a strong D already and are going to go, we want to bring Brian Flores back as a head coach because he's got experience doing it. And I hope that doesn't happen either because I think he's better off as a coordinator than as a head coach.
Yeah, I think I don't think Flores is going to get another head coaching job. I think too many teams have kind of seen what happened in Miami and going, yeah, sure, you're a great defensive coordinator. It's kind of like what I saw with Vic Fangio and with he was the Rams DC for Sean McVay when he first got there. The really old guy. I'm forgetting his name at the moment, but he was a phenomenal defensive coordinator. I think it's going to be one of those things where it's like you got your head coaching shot, you kind of blew it. So like more offensive minded guys get that second chance as opposed to the defensive guys. Dan Quinn kind of being that exception, and I didn't love the Dan Quinn hire to begin with, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things where I think the Commanders soak it up this year because I think reality is going to hit you very hard, and it might even hit hard this year. I'm really hoping when they play the Bears that it's just going to be okay, Mr. Jaden Daniels. You see Soldier Field, or you see this Bears defense, have fun. And hey, Mr. Caleb Williams, you see this, Commanders defense? Go for it, buddy, because they
Yep.
have nothing. And I'm really hoping it's that just so I can finally hear people shut the hell up of them going, oh, the Bears made the wrong pick again. It's like, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, it's getting crazy some of the arguments people are making in those cases because I've heard the Jaden Daniels argument. I had one guy I was talking to this week that was like, Bo Nix is really good. He might be the best quarterback in this class. And if I hadn't been on camera, I might have slapped him
Who
because
the
I
hell
was
said
like,
that? Because
what?
I recently found my work ID, so I will
Yeah,
just throw on a vest, and I need you to tell me who that was so I can hit him.
right. It's insane, isn't it? Like
I need
the
to know who said that.
yeah, I might tell you later, but I'm not telling you right now.
But
But
yeah,
like just oh my god, I couldn't believe that. Like anybody who makes that argument, it's Caleb Williams still looks the best. Is he putting up the same stats Jaden Daniels is? No. But that doesn't matter. He's improving steadily and incrementally week to week right now, which is exactly what you want from a guy who's going to potentially lead you to the Super Bowl. Jaden Daniels, great. He's having an RG3 level season. How far did RG3 go in his career?
played
Like
one really
that's
good
just it.
year.
Jaden Daniels, he's going to do great things for the Commanders. He's going to bring them a lot of publicity. I don't know if he's going to be able to win with the Commanders. He may have to finish his rookie deal out and go elsewhere for him to find that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I just kind of wanted to talk about that this week just
Mhm.
because like I thought like just all of this stuff I'm like guys, like soak it up, be really happy that it's happening right now because I think reality is going to hit you like a bit of a freight train. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about this week, and it was mostly because I heard this clip be talked about on Barstool, and they talked about, are we going to see another Hall of Fame running back once Derrick Henry retires? And I'm sitting back, and some of the reasonings that they talked about was Derrick Henry is only about 18 yards away from getting to that 10,000 mark, only the 32nd player to do so. And the next closest player to potentially get to that 10,000 mark that's currently active is Ezekiel Elliott, who is about 1,000 yards away from doing it. I don't think Elliott will hit that mark. The next player after that is much further down the list. At 75, that's Joe Mixon with 6,596 yards. And I'm listening to these guys talk about this current situation of going, for you to be a Hall of Fame running back, you kind of have to have some of those elite running stats. And when you talk about a guy like Matt Forte, he doesn't have those 10,000 yards, but he is kind of that. He was kind of Christian McCaffrey before Christian McCaffrey came along. I don't think Matt Forte is a Hall of Famer. I would love for Matt Forte to go into the Hall of Fame. Having another Chicago Bears running back get in there, I think would be cool. I don't think he's deserving so. And I think Derrick Henry is a Hall of Famer just because he's been so steadily dangerous for these next couple years. But we're kind of getting to this conversation right now of if we were to look at all of the running backs that have ever made it to the Hall of Fame, I don't know if there's a single player that is currently playing the running back position that's active in the NFL that's not named Derrick Henry that is capable or will be capable of making the Hall of Fame. Because again, you have to factor in age, the amount of yards that they need. Again, you look at Nick Chubb, he is 6,511. If he were to retire tomorrow, he's not a Hall of Famer. And then I look at guys like Christian McCaffrey. Sure, he has a bunch of the receiving yards, but he's only at 6,185. That doesn't scream Hall of Fame numbers. He has 5 more yards, rushing yards, than Ray Rice did for the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
It's not screaming great numbers. Then we talk about Saquon Barkley, a little bit on that younger side. He has 5,646 yards. And is he even going to be able to get to that mark? And like, I just kind of sit back and I go, man, are we going to see another Hall of Fame running back for a long time?
I mean, that's the key, is it's for a long time, because unfortunately, I think a big part of the reason right now is because of the way the offenses are run in the NFL. It is a very pass-heavy league right now. And so you don't see a lot of running backs that are going to be getting a lot of opportunities to be that bell cow the way... I mean, Derrick Henry was with the Titans for many years, and that was behind a mediocre to like just mid-level quarterback and passing attack, which meant he could be that end-all be-all. You don't see that with a lot of teams right now. And I think that's part of the issue. And then as a result, guys aren't progressing as far, and teams are starting to go to that 2 running back because they're like, hey, we need extra blockers for this passing game. We need to make sure that you're better at blocking than running. And so I think that is affecting. We will at some point see one where like,
undoubtedly, but it's just,
yeah, it's honestly, it'll be the first team that sort of settles in on a game plan of, we're going to have that top 15 quarterback, but not be a superstar, passing team, and just run the ball 40 times a game.
yeah, it's one of those things where I look at it and go, the NFL, yes, we are more of a pass-heavy league, but even this year, we're seeing that is kind of changing, where it's going, you need to have a running game, and if you don't, it's going to kind of be a little bit more effective. But we also talked about this when Saquon Barkley was kind of looking for that contract with the Giants of going, if you pay a running back big money, you're kind of dumb. Because why would you go out there and pay a running back a big contract of $10 million a year or more when you can just go out in the 4th round, draft a guy that's going to give you the same production? And I think that's another reason why we're seeing more of these, like why I don't think we'll see a running back make it to the Hall of Fame after Derrick Henry for a long time, just because you'll look at it and go, man, I still don't think that's conversation of, you don't pay running backs money because you can just go draft a guy. I think that's even more important in this kind of resurgence of running backs, because again, we talk about Isaiah Pacheco. He's I would say he's one of the top backs in the NFL just from what he's capable of doing. He was a 7th round pick. And we talk about, like, let's just talk about the 49ers here for a second, where Christian McCaffrey gets injured, Jason Mason or Jordan Mason comes in, offense doesn't look like it's slowing down, and he was an undrafted guy, and we see that every single year of where when the Bears signed DeAndre Swift this offseason. I remember you asked me, you're like, oh, you got to be excited about this, and my reaction was kind of, eh. Mostly because I looked at it and went, he's a good running back, but I don't know if you necessarily need to pay him that. And
Yep.
we all heard me after week number 3 of going, Roschon Johnson needs to be the featured back, and I would still like to see Roschon Johnson as the featured back and use DeAndre Swift as more of that receiving back, and if he can turn into that Matt Forte type back, then yeah. But it's kind of getting to the point where you have to be close to, if not eclipse that 10,000 yard mark as a running back in today's game, unless you're going like you play like 7 seasons and you have 7,000 yard rushing seasons and 7,000 yard receiving seasons. Like, that would kind of be the situation where you could be pretty far away from it and achieve that Hall of Fame status. But that is just something where, like, when we talk about 1,000 for 1,000, we've seen only a handful of those ever. Like,
Yeah.
to do that sort of thing would just be insane.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think there's two big factors that are going to play a role here, and it's, as you said, the running backs are all wanting to get paid. I think it's going to be the guys that sit back and go, I want to win and not necessarily get paid, because then they're going to be able to extend their career for longer and get more opportunities to be that feature back for a longer time. And then with the emergence of the new hip drop tackle penalty, I think as that starts to get cleaned up, we're going to see less of the injuries to the running backs as well, which I think will lead to us seeing more of those guys come near that 10,000 mark. Because I think that's a big issue is we see big guys who we look at them and they go, man, that might be the next Derrick Henry. And then they get hurt horribly on a bad tackle or something. And it's like, okay, now never mind. And so I think those two things, somebody who's willing to take a little less money to stick with a system that's going to utilize them, like a guy like Jordan Mason. If Christian McCaffrey can't come back, Jordan Mason goes, well, I was undrafted. I don't, you don't have to pay me 12 million a year. I'm going to be happy with 3.5 million a year.
Well, a guy that I want to use as a perfect example of kind of what you're saying is David Montgomery.
Yeah.
I think David Montgomery, you look at him and go, he was a outstanding running back in Chicago, doesn't get the world's biggest deal in Detroit. Like, he got a pretty fair deal. That was one of those deals where I kind of looked at him and said, man, I'm extremely disappointed that the Bears didn't sign you to that deal. And then later I found out that the Bears matched that and David Montgomery chose Detroit over that. But it's one of those things. And even him, he hasn't even eclipsed 5,000 yards yet. And so for him in that type of a role, because I don't look at David Montgomery and go, the things that he's doing right now is Hall of Fame worthy. Like, he's not changing the game in such a way. And so that's kind of where I'm coming down to, where like he's gonna need to get to that 10,000 yard mark, and he is not getting younger. And we don't see running backs play past really 28, and once they get to 30, it's almost like, all right, sit down, grandpa, let the young kids play.
Well, and I think a big part of that is due to the injuries. Their legs get so banged up that by the time they're late 20s, they can't run the same way as they were anymore. Derrick Henry is sort of one of those anomalies. And that's going to be what has to come down to, is it's going to have to be some just physical specimen beast that comes out and is able to power through all of that adversity and those injuries. Like I know my Pittsburgh Steelers are coming up on that decision at the end of this year. They declined Najee Harris's option, and so they're looking at it going, are we going to pay Najee Harris? Are we going to pay Jalen Warren? Or are we going to go and draft 2 more running backs?
You know me, go draft a guy. There's so many great guys out there this
Well,
year.
that's exactly it. But at the same time, this is one of those situations where I look at it, and if you're Najee Harris and you go, okay, well, by the end of the year, you get over 1,000 yards again rushing, and you go, well, I don't need 12 million. I'm willing to go for 6.
Yep.
at that point, then you go, okay, well, we can give this guy another 5 years, which would give him another at the rate he's going, 5,000 yards because he's 1,000 yard a season player, and he would reach that 7,000 8,000 yard mark by the time he's 28, 29. But a lot of those traditional Hall of Fame running backs we've seen, they get to that 10,000 yard mark because they play into their 30s. Derrick Henry is only able to get there at 28 because he had a 2,000 yard season and an 1,800 yard season. Those cut down on eating those extra 2,000 yard seasons, and that's sort of what it is. You need a guy that's going to be able to be really special 1 or 2 years, and then the trademark of consistent the
Yeah.
rest of his career. And it's
I
hard to find that. It's hard to find that in any position, really.
Oh, undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. I don't think we will ever see anyone even come close to getting to Emmitt Smith's record of 18,355, which is, again, you just sit back and go, man, that's just absurd. And number two is Walter. I still think Walter's the greatest running back that has ever played the
Mhm.
game. I know people will often say Barry Sanders or Jim Brown. I Again, I'm gonna use my Bears bias here. It's Walter. I'll fight you about that if you want to have that fight. Not you. I'm talking about other people. I mean, if you want to have that fight, I'm happy to drive to your house and have the fisticuffs.
Right? I mean, I liked watching the bus run, but he's not Walter Payton or Barry Sanders for that matter. So
Yeah, I will always go down as the two best backs I think that have ever played the game are Walter Payton and Barry Sanders. But I
yeah,
can't give Detroit that because fuck Detroit. But I will always still say Walter was the best because he's Walter, baby. He's sweetness.
yep.
But it's one of those weird things where, again, we just kind of have that conversation of like, it really is kind of a possibility of where we just don't see it for like 30 years once Derrick Henry's gone.
I don't think it's going to be that long, honestly. I think it'll be within the next 5. We're going to see somebody come up through the college ranks where we go, this kid's going to be special.
We thought that was Saquon though. We thought that it's Bijan
Yeah,
Robinson.
and Saquon was one of those ones that had that really horrible injury on, I believe it was a horse collar tackle that resulted in him losing that ability and losing like 3 years of productivity. We're seeing him this year reemerge a little bit,
Mhm.
and that's just it. If he can stay healthy, he could still get another 5 to 6 seasons of 1,000 plus yards. We saw what DeAndre Swift was able to do in that backfield in Philadelphia. Saquon Barkley arguably is better than Swift.
Oh, not even arguably. I
And so like that's why I think within a few years we'll see somebody coming up through the college ranks where everybody's watching and going, this guy's special. And it's going to be a matter of, will he be able to remain healthy? Because when the NFL took all those headshots out of the game, which was the right thing to do, you had to protect guys. It just unfortunately resulted in guys going for the knees and going for the ankles. And as a running back, that's where your money is. Like with a receiver, if they break a finger or a bone in their hand, everybody goes, oh shit, those are their money makers. Same thing with running back. You blow out an ACL, you tear an Achilles, even something like Achilles tendonitis. It can mess up your legs to the point where you can't do your job anymore.
and that's kind of why I say it's like we are literally gonna have to see the perfect storm. Because
Mhm.
again, I look at all the running backs that are in the league today right now. There's not a single one that I look at and go, that guy has a case to make the Hall of Fame, with the exception of Derrick Henry. And even then, it might be a long shot for him.
I don't think it's a long shot for Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry is at the latest a second ballot Hall of Famer. He is that good. But you said like it takes a perfect storm. You look at all the running backs that are Hall of Famers already, and you could describe them as a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Like that's what it was, and that's why they're fewer and far between compared to some of the other positions.
Oh, don't like again. We're making the argument for a guy making it to the Hall of Fame, which is just such an exclusive class. But
Mhm.
and again, like all those guys had those perfect storms. But it's just like today's game that just makes me sit back and go, I just can't see anyone not named Derrick Henry that's currently in the NFL making that jump, because again, they're gonna have to get close to, if not surpass that 10,000 yard mark, or change
Yep.
the game in such a way that is just like like they would have to do almost like a Devin Hester sort of thing of just changing the way that the game is played. And I just can't. The only guy that I would say that could potentially maybe do this, I would look at, is maybe Jonathan Taylor, but even then he's had a year of injury history, and like I'm not even confident with that. It's just, this is just such a weird thing that we're going to be kind of going into for the next, I think, like I know I said 30 years, but I kind of spit that number out there. I think probably for like the next 15 years we're probably going to struggle to find one of those kind of almost Hall of Fame worthy backs.
It it's possible, but at the same time, while we don't see anybody in the league right now that we think can be that, any one of them could step up into that role. There are a lot of young guys I see that have that potential that could, like Brees Hall. If he settles down to be much more of a running back and catches less out of the backfield, we could see some big things out of him. Like there are guys that could grow into that role still. Like we don't get Hall of Fame running backs super often. There's less than 50 of them in the Hall of Fame. And so I think we get usually every 5 to 7 years Hall of Fame caliber running back.
Yeah.
Like who was the last one? Maybe Adrian Peterson.
I would say Derrick Henry.
Well, Derrick Henry's still playing though. I'm talking guys who have recently retired that will likely be going to the Hall of Fame or just went.
Yeah, I see what you're saying now.
You
Yeah.
know, like Derrick Henry is the next one to go, but like who was the last one to go?
Yeah, well that's a great question. Is it,
Right?
yeah. I would
And
say
I think
potentially the next guy is the kid out of Boise State, Ashton Genty. Again, if you haven't looked up his stats for this season, go look them up because they're stupid. Like like Sterling, I always talk about when we play Madden or NCAA. These are numbers that I get my running backs to do, and these are just stupid numbers. And but even then, like I don't know. It's just it's a weird thought to think about, and
so.
yeah.
The the list I was able to pull up, I don't know if it's a complete list or not, but the last one I'm seeing is LaDainian Tomlinson, which was about 15 to 20 years ago when he was really in his prime.
Yeah, it was kind of Adrian Peterson retired in 2021 and he kind of took over for LT, but so yeah, like yeah, it kind of comes
That's
in
all I'm
that.
saying. Is
Yeah.
it's not something that we usually see in that like every year there's a Hall of Fame level running back in the last 30 years even. In the last 30 years there's probably only been a handful. Guys like Emmitt Smith, LaDainian Tomlinson, Jerome Bettis, like there weren't a lot that were really there. And so that's why I think it's just because of the change in the game right now that we're not seeing any that we can pinpoint. But as soon as we get one of those offensive coordinators that wants to go, I want to be run heavy, and I've got this guy who's a beast back here, and I can pass the ball enough that it spreads the defenses out so he can have consistent 100-yard games, then we're going to start seeing that happen.
Yeah,
And somebody will emerge within the next decade that we're like, okay, this is going to be the next guy, the next Derrick Henry.
yeah, it's gonna be one of those things where I think we're gonna kind of wait to have to see it to believe it, and it's
I
gonna be one of
yeah,
those things where it's gonna be like him being in the league for like 7-8 years, we're gonna kind of ultimately have this conversation of going like, are we gonna see another guy like the I know exactly, and I agree with what you are, but it is kind of one of just those weird conversations I sit back and think about of going like, man, it's like just with the way the running back world has been, it could be potentially a little bit longer than what we think it could be. But I don't have anything else here today. I see you're shaking your head, but thank you all.
No, I was just looking at some of Derrick Henry's stats to sort of see when he started taking off in his career.
Yeah, it was like year
Yeah.
2.
In year 3, you know,
Yeah.
like the first 2 seasons, he was 500 yards, 5 touchdowns,
Yeah, that's right,
700
because he was
yards, 5
morely used as like
touchdowns,
a backup.
and then he started going over 1,000.
Yeah, and then he.
Yeah.
But for Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment on the video as it really helps out. But till next time, for us, peace.